During the 1990s, singers Pam and Phil Morgan crisscrossed America, sharing their religious faith through music. On June 4th, 2000, they concluded a concert in Merwin, Missouri. On this day, they would face a crisis that would put their faith to the ultimate test. Pam and Phil's next destination was Stockton, Missouri, a 2-hour drive away. Since school was out, their 2 young daughters, Kayla and Alicia, were traveling with them. All were exhausted by the rigors of their summer tour.
We knew that our 2 girls desperately needed to take naps, and if they didn't get a good nap that afternoon in the car, we were going to have a rough night with them. Kayla, our oldest, was not quite ready to take a nap. So when we started out, Pam told me, he says, why don't you go ahead and drive, and I'm going to sit back here with Kayla.
Within a few minutes, Pam coaxed Kayla to sleep. Pam herself soon drifted off too, but she had not put on a seatbelt. The quiet van had a dangerously tranquilizing effect on Phil.
Probably didn't realize how drowsy I was, and I should have stopped, gotten out and walked around a little bit, turned on the radio or something.
But he didn't. With his cruise control set at 70, Phil nodded off. Just briefly, but long enough for him to veer directly toward a guardrail. The van crashed and flipped onto its side, skidding to a stop farther down the highway. Phil, unaware that his collarbone was broken, checked on his family.
In the next row of seats was Alicia in her car seat. I could see that she was okay. Kayla was in the middle seat, so I was reaching for her when I realized that she was the only one back there. That was a horrifying moment when I realized that Pam was not with us.
As Phil began a frantic search for Pam, motorists began to stop at the crash site. One of the first was registered nurse Cindy Obenhaus.
As I ran up, I saw a man trying to get out of a van that was overturned. He was trying to push a door open, and I also saw kind of a crumpled mass, which was a person on the highway, and someone yelled, "I think she's dead." She obviously had a lot of scrapes, a lot of tissue damaged, and I actually did see her scalp, part of her scalp, on the road, so I knew that she had skidded probably across the highway.
When I saw her, I had no idea if she was dead or not. That was my first question. Is she alive? And the nurse that was there said, yes, she's breathing.
Pam's hold on life, however, was tenuous. Her left arm was nearly shorn off at the shoulder. Her left ear was ripped in 2. But Cindy feared that Pam had suffered far worse injuries that she could not yet confirm.
I pretty well had an idea that she had broken her neck, or at least had some sort of severe spinal or neck injury, and that she had internal injuries because she was bleeding out of her nose, her mouth, her ears, and that is not a good sign. I was not very hopeful that she was going to live.
Stay still. They're on their way.
As Pam struck the pavement, she was traveling at the same speed as the van at the moment of impact, almost 70 miles per hour. During her nightmarish tumble across the highway, she absorbed an unimaginable amount of energy. In the space of a few seconds, her body was contorted and twisted in ways it was never designed to endure. Within minutes, a state policeman on routine patrol arrived to assist.
555, please, someone.
As he radioed for paramedics, more conscientious motorists filled in.
Another person said, "I'm a respiratory therapist," and she actually had a stethoscope, and she was assessing her with that. And within 5 minutes of the respiratory therapist stopping, a doctor ran up, and he was an anesthesiologist. So altogether, we had almost a whole medical team of people there. We did not want to move her unless we absolutely had to, because we knew that her spine had been injured. So we just kept assessing her and monitoring her until the paramedics arrived.
Paramedics knew that speed was critical, but so was keeping Pam's shattered body immobilized. After stabilizing her neck in a supportive collar, they carefully secured her to a stretcher. Then they raced her toward Bates County Hospital in Butler, Missouri.
They didn't think she was going to make the trip to the hospital. I told Kayla that her mom was hurt. They were going to take her in an ambulance, and it was a good time to pray for Mama.
Can you feel me touching your feet?
She didn't really feel me touching her feet at all, wasn't able to move, and didn't really have any reflex in her feet. I was almost certain at that point she had some sort of spinal injury, and that the chances were pretty good that it was some sort of a permanent deficit that I was finding, as it is in most cases where somebody's thrown from a vehicle and injured in that fashion.
Doctors in Bates County were not equipped to cope with Pam's devastating injuries. She was there only minutes before she was airlifted to Research Medical Center in Kansas City. Awaiting Pam were her worried parents.
It was a terrible sight. She was all bandaged up.
Pam, your folks are here.
She had blood all over her face. And she opened her eyes and she says, "Hi, Mom and Dad. Mom, please pray." And then they took her away.
In the trauma room, Dr. Richard Schnabel carefully examined Pam's brutalized body.
Do you feel that at all, Pam?
She had those complex lacerations, and she had orthopedic and soft tissue injuries, but really the major problem was the problem with the spinal cord.
Neurologist Dr. Frank Coufal confirmed that Pam's neck was broken and her spine was grotesquely twisted.
When I viewed the initial MRI sequences over at the MRI suite, I was horrified by the appearance of one of the worst dislocations of the neck I had ever seen. These darn things.
In a desperate effort to straighten it, Dr. Coufal inserted tongs in Pam's skull and put her in traction.
Okay.
The rope.
Then I had the painful task of talking to Pam's husband about what my expectations were. I told him that I did not expect her to have any functional recovery below the level of injury, and that she was destined to be a quadriplegic. I do not suspect.
When I got the news from the doctors that Pam was paralyzed, that she would never walk again, the reality of that hit me. But there was a song that kept going through my head. And this song talks about a person in a hospital. And it basically says, the doctors don't know what God knows. And to me, that was the way that God was reminding me that He was going to take care of it. He was still in charge.
Phil's faith, however, seemed of little consequence when measured against unalterable medical realities. There was nothing to suggest that Pam would ever walk again. A terrifying traffic accident left gospel singer Pam Morgan paralyzed. Her spine had not only been broken, but horribly twisted. Doctors straightened it, but feared the damage was irreparable. 4 days after the accident, Pam had her first lucid moments.
Okay, we're gonna make it through this together.
I was in ICU, and I remember waking up with Phil by my side. And he had a sling around his shoulders from his broken collarbone. And it was then that I realized that we had been in an accident and things were not right. My doctors gave me zero chance of walking again. But I know that in everything God has a plan. And somehow I had to trust Him that He would work it all out.
She showed no signs of bitterness or anger towards her condition. She accepted it with extreme grace. And that remains remarkable to me.
Dr. Coufal's challenge now was to fuse Pam's broken spine together. The surgery was not intended to make her walk again, but merely to stabilize her neck. Still, the procedure, called a 360-degree fusion, was fraught with risk.
I had told Pam and her husband that there was a chance that with the surgery we could potentially worsen her condition, because any time you're working close to an injured spinal cord in the setting of an extremely unstable cervical spine, there's a chance of causing further injury.
Treading carefully, Dr. Coufal found the break in Pam's spinal column, then fused it together with a titanium plate. 3 weeks passed. Just as doctors predicted, Pam continued to have no feeling in her torso and legs. Her supportive family and friends tried their best to boost her spirits. A frequent visitor was Pam and Phil's road manager, Barb Underwood.
Let's look at your toe.
I thought it might make her feel better if we would polish her fingernails and her toenails, because that kind of makes a woman feel better. And I was looking at her toes.
Let's see your toes.
And her toe moved.
They look pretty good, don't they? Pam, you moved your toe. Yes, you moved it.
And my heart just soared.
Try. Can you move it again, Pam?
And she said, do it again.
Do it.
And so I looked at my toe,
I saw you
and
move it.
I tried as hard as I
didn't
could
just
to move
move
it, but I couldn't move it. And so I kept focusing on it and kept trying and kept trying. And sure enough, the next day I moved it again.
How are things today?
Good. I'm still moving my toe.
Oh my goodness. You can. Lo and behold, I saw her voluntarily flickering ever so slightly her big toe on one side.
The look on his face was like, and it was just the neatest thing.
Oh my goodness, that's great. That's unbelievable.
When Pam moved that toe for the first time, that was huge.
Can you feel me touching you here?
That was kind of the first ray of sunshine.
Something I didn't expect, Pam. Even at that point, despite my surprise, I certainly didn't expect her to become ambulatory again.
That is good.
She remained a C7 quadriplegic by our examinations. And as a consequence, we had no expectation that she would recover function.
Despite this grim prognosis, Pam slowly gained tiny increments of sensation as she was transferred to the Rehabilitation Center of Kansas City.
Rehab was painful, it was slow, it was frustrating. My goal was to be able to sit unaided by anyone with my hands on my lap. And I thought, that's impossible. There's no way.
It was painful to see her struggle with the basics. She couldn't sit up. She couldn't do anything. And to see how hard she would have to work at each step.
And let's see if
Still, Pam persevered.
Giving up was not an option for me. No, This is not acceptable. I am not satisfied in this wheelchair. I can't do anything. I am a mother. I have 2 small children who need their mother. I have a house to care for, and I have a husband who needs me. This cannot happen to me.
Incredibly, Pam continued to gain sensation. 4 months after her accident, she attempted the Herculean task of taking her first step.
It was hard. It was terrifying. They had to teach me how to kick out my good leg and take a step. And then they would maneuver my right leg in position.
Awesome!
I got her to take the step, and then she just let go, emotionally crying, and finally realized what had happened.
3 months after that eventful moment, Dr. Coufal witnessed the impossible. Pam Morgan, diagnosed as a C7 quadriplegic, was walking.
His jaw just dropped open. And that was so cool.
That was astonishing.